So good morning. So we're here for the second interview. I'm here with Angela Tripp. This is our special needs services department head, our locally here in our town, and she's been nice enough to answer a few questions in her experience as well, because she's really the person who's dealing with this on the front line directly, with all of our students and our support staff in the special needs department. So again, we don't have that much time, so I'll just go right into the questions. Thank you, Angela, for
No problem.
being with us today. So basically, before we ask any questions, like, can you just give us like a bit of your experience here, like your in the north of northern education and here in Wamingji and other places?
Yeah, that's no problem. Actually, my entire career is in the north,
Okay.
which is a very short career. I'm not that old. I started out in northern Saskatchewan, just a normal teacher, taught grade 1, then taught high school. That was polar opposite. Dealt with special needs students. My very first year out, I had an autistic little boy in my class.
Okay.
No support for special needs up there at all, period. It was a learning curve. It was just trial and error with them. Went to Northern Ontario. To be honest, I don't know. There's like some form of special needs support up there. There was basically a me up there, but they had lack of resources, even worse than we do here. So it was basically just another person. Then I came here. So I've been here the longest. I'm in my 6th year now. This is my first full year doing this position. I did start just after COVID hit last year. So it was kind of thrown in and figure it out as we go. But yeah, so I started out teaching here, gradually worked my way to the resource, and now I'm
Right, you were resource.
I was
department
resource
head too, right?
Yeah, the year
you did this job?
before. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So again, extensive experience in the northern context. So we'll just get into the questions. So as the spec ed department head, just kind of an overview question, like what are the biggest challenges you see? What are the challenges you're faced with on your day-to-day managing the department?
Yeah, time. Time would be the biggest one. We need to somehow manage to add in an extra 5 or 6 hours in a day. But getting all the kids is the hardest. Being able to support all of the needs and the vast variety of needs that we have. We actually are one of the schools that has the most educators with 13. Other schools have 1 to 3 maybe.
Great.
And even that's not enough.
Okay.
We've got some very, very high needs students that need an educator one-on-one all the time. We have others that in a perfect world they would get an educator one-on-one, but are having to share or when one's available be assigned one. And just supporting the teachers, because like as a teacher from my background, I know how hard it is to have those special needs, those learning disabilities in the classroom,
Right.
and having to try and help those ones while also helping the other students. Or even if you've got 3 kids that are completely different learning disabilities, the planning and the workload that goes into having a class like that is extensive.
Right.
And it's hard not being able to help solve that problem.
We follow kind of like an inclusion model, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a lot of work on the teachers to be
Yeah.
able to support like the inclusive students, and then also manage the regular like classroom
Yeah.
environment with the mainstream students. And
There are very few students that are not in a main classroom.
okay.
And of those students, they are extremely high needs. Could be violence, could be they're just profound. We have some autism students in the classroom. We have some autism students not in the classroom.
Right.
It all depends on the children and how it's working, and how they interact or disrupt or
Right.
communicate with the teacher and the other kids in the class.
Perfect. Thanks. So I'll ask you the next question. So how do you feel about the process of identifying special needs students at the level of support just generally in the north? How the whole process happens, like with the referrals, and do you think it's effective or do you think it's not effective?
I'm going to argue both sides, actually.
Okay.
Because pre-COVID, we had access to a lot more specialists. It still wasn't perfect because we did share one specialist with every school in the Cree School Board. So they weren't here for more than a week or two at a time, no more than twice a year. So it was still difficult getting the support to diagnose the students, but it was easier than it is now, because now that COVID's hit, nobody's coming north. All the referrals that you put in are basically kind of in limbo at the clinic.
Right.
So until COVID disappears, which is hopefully soon, or we find another way around it, there won't be any new diagnoses.
Right.
Very few kids are being sent down for specialists. The ones that are usually the ones that are already diagnosed and are having follow-ups.
Right.
So I've sent quite a few referrals into the clinic already this year. I believe 32 of them.
Wow.
So that's 32 new students.
Right.
To
this
diagnose
year.
this year. That's not students that are already diagnosed that I need a follow-up with. And that is both high school and elementary levels. But they're not going to, and I know they're not, and when I handed them in, I did tell them I acknowledge they're not going to be dealt with right away because it's not a possibility.
Right.
So that is my biggest challenge when it comes to...
Just as a side note, nobody is really able to travel into the communities right now because of the COVID protocol, so that's why it's just to add to the difficulties that we're dealing with. Appreciate it. So next question. How many students are currently in the student population of both of our schools, officially or unofficially? So
high school is less populated. I believe they are 192 students. And of that, you see kind of a gradual decrease of disabilities as they get into the higher levels. So for example, our Sec 5 group, I believe, has 6 students that have learning difficulties or diagnosed accommodations required for such as exams and that. The further down you get, so if you go down to the Sec 1s, where it is our largest group, yes, we have 3 groups of them. I would say about 80 to 90% of those students have some sort of either diagnosis or learning disability. Which is difficult, especially when you have, like, they're considered high school students. I mean, they're only grade 7, and I'm from Ontario, so that's not high school to me. So they want to be treated like high school students. Sending an educator over there, in most cases, is counterproductive. Because they don't want to be seen as the one that needs the help from the educator, even though, like I said, majority of that class actually could use that help. But you hit elementary, and that's a completely different story. We have 236 students, I believe, 237 in elementary, and the extent of support that's needed, and diagnoses, and accommodations, and modifications, and therapies, it's mind-blowing. We started last year basically color coding students for what they need. So for example, if they have an IEP, they'll have a pink color with them. If they are coded, it'll be purple. If they're on the watch list, which is the ones where they've been flagged by the teachers as struggling, or you can see in like RPM assessments for the reading that they're well below reading levels, they have another color. If they're in the Empower program, they have another color. So I've actually run out of colors of highlighters. I'm using Sharpies and markers now. So it's quite extensive. It makes the school population list look very pretty and rainbow colored.
I'm looking at it now. I'll show you a picture of it after in reference to this question, what it looks like. So it's extensive. Because our kindergarten, our pre-K are all Cree based. They generally don't have as many flagged students. They're coming out of the daycare. They're not assessed in the way that all the other kids are. So once you hit grade 1, you'll start seeing more colors. You hit grade 2, it gets even more. But it's the grade 5, 6s that you see the most colors in, because by the time they hit grade 5, 6, it is clearly apparent when they're struggling.
It's not that they're 2 years behind in learning English, because where we start in Ontario in kindergarten and pre-K, they start here in grade 1. So it does, the higher up you get, the more colorful it gets. So it's kind of the flip of high school.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about here, we have implemented some things that have helped with that. So we are seeing a bit of a shift.
Right, and perfect. And thank you. And just last question, like we're a little short on time, but just, I know this is, my question is what can or should be done for improvement? I know this is, again, like a major question we can't really tackle, but just in your opinion and your experience, like what do you think is, just quickly, you think, what are some immediate things that could be improved upon, like, for the situations we have here?
Again, it would be different for both schools. Elementary, we do seem to have a fairly good jump start on helping solve the problem. So this year we have a new math resource, which has been working wonders. So we have our full-time English resource, we've got our Empower program running, we've got Lexia running now. So we have a lot of supports that we can do in-house, already in place in the elementary. High school is a different story. We don't have as many in there. My very first thing would be, we need a resource teacher in high school. It is extremely hard to get those kids into reading programs, because most reading programs are elementary based. There's very few, if any, I don't know any, that are high school based for them. So when it comes time to high school, those ones that are still struggling, they need that resource. They need that person to pull them out, to work the one-on-one with them, so they're not centered out in the classroom. They're not having to do baby programs. Like, we don't want to shut them off of education.
For sure.
Outside of the school, the number one thing is just support. We need those specialists to come up more frequently, which, I mean, there are some that they don't have a career down south, but because they're traveling so much, serving so many schools, they don't get to be here very often. The one saving grace is we have been able to do Zoom sessions with our psychologist. So he has been able to see more students than he normally would, but the downfall is he doesn't get to meet them. He doesn't get to observe them in the classroom. So it's just a conversation and what he gets from what the students say. But we need more specialists.
Professionals too.
We need the ones that, like, I'm not a specialist. I can read as many books as I want. I'm still not going to be certified to be a psychologist, a psychiatrist, any of that. We need the ones that are, because they're the ones that know how to help the students. Though that information we get from them is key.
Perfect. Well, I thank you very much for your experience, insights. I just want to show you the classroom, the school. Maybe Angela can explain it a little bit. How do I flip it here? 1 second. I want to flip around. I'll just do it this way. So there's just an indication of the color coding system of how it is. So you said you code everything, right? You color code everything. So I mean, you can kind of see the
legend.
The legend is down here. Sorry, my phone won't flip around right now, but just to give you an example, that's how many different situations, depending on, it could be a number of different things, right?
Like
that
physical, mental,
that are going on in just the elementary school right now. So just to give you an idea. So we're just going to sign off now. Again, I'm going to thank Angela. And thank you very much. We'll see you in the other video.